Presiding Officer, as we conclude the 2023-24 Scottish Budget Bill, I have reflected carefully on the points raised in Parliament and by a range of organisations, and recognise the financial challenges faced at this time by individuals, households, businesses, the third sector and the public sector. I am aware of the challenges faced as we manage our way through this cost crisis, and this budget is designed to do as much as possible to assist at this most difficult moment. None of this is easy. This is by far the hardest budget process that I have led, with the effects of raging inflation being felt against the impact of more than a decade of austerity and Barnett funding down 5% in real terms since 2021-22. I have been open and transparent with Parliament on the budget challenges we are managing, both for this current financial year and for the forthcoming financial year. I indicated to the Finance and Public Administration Committee on the 7th of February the 2022-23 budgetary position continues to improve, and I am now confident of the path to balance for this financial year. This is as a result of careful budget management and taking the hard decisions to live within our means, despite the ferocious pressures created by high inflation. I can also report to Parliament 2 changes to our funding position that enabled me to make some further steps to increase commitments made in the draft budget. The first of these changes is that it has been confirmed by His Majesty's Treasury that we will receive £125 million of additional funding as a result of Barnett consequentials arising from the UK supplementary estimates. Secondly, I also expect to receive an additional £21 million for 23-24 due to the correction of an error in our UK spending review allocation. Given that I am of course.
Daniel Johnson.
I'm very grateful to the Deputy First Minister for giving way. Could he just clarify, the £125 million addition, is that in the current financial year, and will that be carried forward into the coming financial year and the coming budget?
Cabinet Secretary.
Because I have secured a path to balance for this financial year, because of the late arrival of the supplementary estimate figure, I intend to carry that forward into the next financial year, and I am about to make funding allocations accordingly as a consequence of the receipt of that finance. Given that I am confident in the financial position for 22-23, which is the point I have just made to Mr Johnson, I am now able to consider some additional financial commitments for next year. I would like to begin by fully recognising the budget challenges faced by local government. In my budget statement in December, I outlined the Government's commitment to work constructively with local government to create an effective partnership to assist in meeting this challenge. I use this debate today to reiterate the Government's willingness to engage in that process and to work with local government to undertake the reform necessary to achieve that aim. Along with that commitment to work together effectively, I am committing to provide local government with an additional £100 million to support local authorities and their expenditure. This funding is designed to assist councils in making a meaningful 2023-24 pay offer for non-teaching staff, recognising the critical role that those staff play in delivering frontline services. I hope this will enable a swift agreement in the Scottish Joint Council pay negotiations so that relevant staff receive a pay increase as early as possible in 2023-24. I will, yes, to Mr Fraser.
Murdo Fraser.
I'm very grateful to Mr Swinney for giving way. Can he just clarify, is the money he's just announced part of, or the entirety of the money that was announced last week to fund this increased offer that's already on the table to teachers?
Cabinet Secretary.
The £100 million is additional resources to what was announced last week, and I'll come on to explain the issues about the announcements that were made last week. Last week we confirmed that we would provide an additional £156 million from Scottish Government funds to support a new pay offer for teachers, £33 million in this financial year, plus a further £123 million next year. That would see salaries rise by 11.5% from April, and I encourage this proposition to be put to teaching staff for their consideration. This additional funding for 23-24 is on top of the £570 million increase in funding that has already been included in the local government settlement, and takes the total additional funding for next year for local government to £793 million. Presiding Officer, as a result of the decisions in this budget, the total funding available to councils to support local services will be nearly £13.5 billion, plus the revenues from any local decisions on council tax. This is equivalent to a 3% real terms increase compared to the 2022-23 budget bill. We are providing full discretion over £105 million of funding to allow councils to replace national empty property relief with, for example, more localised schemes, and we will also increase the maximum fee levels that a local authority can charge for a penalty charge notice for parking infringements. This represents a comprehensive support package for local government within this challenging financial settlement. It is welcome that progress has also been made in recent days in the Agenda for Change pay discussions, and the Government is undertaking further work to put in place a public sector pay policy prior to the start of the new financial year. Of course.
Stephen Kerr.
Grateful to the Deputy First Minister for giving way. I'm still not very clear, and I'm sure other colleagues in the Chamber will want to know, where is the £156 million that he has mentioned in relation to the payover? Where has that money come from? Because the Deputy First Minister went to great lengths, not least with my interventions, to make it clear that he didn't have any scope for manoeuvrability. There was no flexibilities. Now, setting aside what he has said in terms of the money, the additional money that's going to local government, where's the £156 million coming from?
Cabinet Secretary.
I've set out already in my earlier remarks that £33 million is coming from this year. Now, that's been available because I've taken decisions to enable me to balance the financial year this year, which was extremely difficult, and find within the budget reductions that I have made and that I've required my colleagues to sign up to free up £33 million this year to put into a teacher's pay deal. So that's where the money's come from this financial year, because I've forced my colleagues to take hard decisions. And then next year, the Government is allocating from the existing budget provision that we are making a further £123 million to support. And of course, the passing of the budget today is necessary to enable that money to be put on the table. So I hope there's no mucking about today and not voting in favour of the budget that I'm putting in front of Parliament for consideration. Of course.
Willie Rennie.
The Deputy First Minister says there's £100 million extra on top of the 500 that you announced for local government earlier. He knows those figures are disputed. He must accept that there's going to be significant cuts in local government. Will he accept responsibility for those cuts? Because these are a direct result of the decisions that he's making in his budget.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think what I've tried to explain to Parliament on countless occasions, and I've explained it face-to-face to local government as well, is that the financial comparison that's made is from budget bill to budget bill. From budget bill to budget bill, there is now, as a consequence of the decisions that I have made today, £793 million more available to local government to spend next year than this year. Now, in anybody's book, I think that must be something to welcome. I hope that can be welcomed. And I know Mr Rennie and I are in a bit of a role of goodwill just now, so I do hope that he's going to be speaking to endorse what I'm saying, although I see Mr Cole-Hamilton's lectern is up, so that makes me worried that the calm voice of Mr Rennie will not be heard in this debate. But if he wants to intervene on me in my closing speech to welcome my announcements, he's very welcome to do so. I recognise the difficulties being faced by our island authorities, Presiding Officer, in managing the cost increases facing their inter-islands ferry network due to the effects of inflation and rising fuel prices. This particularly applies in Orkney and Shetland, but to a lesser extent in Argyll and Bute and in Highland. So the second commitment, the Government gave a commitment some years ago to fully fund those services. So the second commitment that I make today is that that is a commitment we will honour. We recognise that there are increased costs, and my officials are engaging with the local authorities concerned specifically on the level of funding required, and Parliament will be informed once those decisions have concluded. The third and final announcement I want to make today is that in the earlier committee debate on the budget, I acknowledge the call from Claire Adamson MSP, convener of Parliament's Culture and Constitution Committee, to continue to sustain our investment in culture and the arts. The importance of this funding to the well-being of our society has always been passionately championed in Parliament by Fiona Hislop MSP as a long-serving Culture Secretary in the Scottish Government. We had asked Creative Scotland to sustain investment next year by utilising £6.6 million from their accumulated lottery reserves, in place of a further year of additional grant funding to compensate for generally lower National Lottery income. I am now in a position not to require that, and I will provide an uplift of £6.6 million for Creative Scotland for 23-24 to ensure their reserve funding can supplement rather than replace grant funding. That means there is a substantial increase in the Scottish Government funding for culture and major events in the next financial year, at a time when our country requires the inspiration that the culture and arts sector can provide for all of us. I have judged that this is the absolute limit of the additional funding that I can provide based on the current financial position. The detail of the budget revisions will be reported to the Parliament as part of the autumn budget revision. Together with our partners in the Scottish Green Party, we offer today a substantial budget package that will help those who need it the most. The budget measures that we bring forward are anchored in three major themes. First, our determination to end child poverty. Second, the need to support the transition of our economy to net zero. And third, the requirement for sustainability in our public services. The budget strengthens our social contract with every citizen of Scotland, who will continue to enjoy many benefits not available throughout the United Kingdom. Parliament has already passed the Scottish Rate Resolution setting the tax rates for next year. The Scottish Government has taken the steps we believe are appropriate to deliver fair and progressive taxation, where we ask those who can afford to contribute more to support investment in our public services to do so. Those principles are reflected in our decision to increase the top and higher rates of taxation by 1 pence each, and to levy a higher rate of tax through the additional dwelling supplement. These decisions will mean that the majority of people in Scotland will still pay less in taxation than if they lived in the rest of the United Kingdom. Our progressive choices on Scottish income tax mean that this year the Government will deliver record funding of over £19 billion for the health and social care portfolio, with over £2 billion of funding for primary care to deliver and improve primary health care services in the community. The budget also delivers for businesses. The Government has responded to the biggest ask from business organisations to freeze the non-domestic rates poundage, saving ratepayers around £300 million next year. The package secures the lowest poundage in the United Kingdom and supports businesses with a package of reliefs worth around £744 million. Presiding Officer, delivering support for people most in need in these difficult times is the foundation of this budget. This Government is doing all we can to support individuals and families, which in turn supports a stronger, more resilient, sustainable economy. The budget commits over £5.2 billion for social security payments to provide support to over 1 million people in Scotland. This represents an increase of over £1 billion on last year's budget. This includes £442 million of investment in the Scottish Child Payment, a key support for eligible families, providing £25 per week per child, and only available in Scotland because of the choices this Government has made to give a lifeline to families facing difficulty in our country. Of course.
Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you. I thank the Deputy First Minister for the intervention. Can he set out how many families received the Scottish Child Payment before Christmas from the extension of the child payment from over 6s to 16-year-olds?
Cabinet Secretary.
I don't have that number to hand, but I'll endeavour to send that on to Pam Duncan-Glancy. But what I can say is that there are families in this country who are surviving because of the child payment that this Government has put in place. There are, of course, other... I would love to take an intervention from Christine Graham.
Christine Graham.
It's not a love match, this. However, what I would say to Deputy First Minister, I'm shocked that the Tory benches cannot even applaud the child payment, which is needed so much because of Tory austerity and outrageous inflation.
Cabinet Secretary, and I must ask you to draw your remarks to a conclusion.
Christine Graham is a wise and thoughtful Member of Parliament, and I would have thought she shouldn't be that surprised by the Conservatives' lack of reaction to the news of the Scottish Child Payment. Presiding Officer, the decisions in this budget are designed to support those who are facing difficulty, designed to support businesses to make their way through the challenging transition that is required to be made to net zero, and to ensure that our public services can meet the needs of the public. These are difficult decisions in difficult economic times. The budget that has been set out to Parliament enables us to invest in our public services, to ensure a strong boost to local authority funding, and to ensure that we help those who need it the most. I move the budget resolution in my name.